Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ministry Leaders Podcast, episode 19. We're a podcast aimed at equipping local church leaders and ministry leaders to better serve their ministries and churches. Whether you're an elder, vestry member, deacon or trustee, small group leader, or on pastoral staff. There has been a lot of discussion this past weekend about whether churches are essential and whether it's time to reopen them. And the discussion mainly focused on worship services. Some said it was absolutely time to hold worship services again in person. Worship services are protected by our Constitution, and they're essential for the well-being and emotional support that they provide for people. Others said it's still too risky to hold worship services, that they easily become hubs of transmission for the virus. Still others said that in-person worship services are not essential to what it means to be the church. So who's right? Well, sometimes it's helpful to step back from a situation and get a different perspective. And that's what I'd like to try to help us do right now. I'd like for you to imagine with me that we are part of the early church, that we're leaders of a group of maybe 40 believers who meet in a decent-sized home in a Greco-Roman city. And we're meeting as leaders because we've got a problem on our hands, a good problem. Our outreach efforts have been successful, and we've just seen another 40 people decide to follow Jesus. But here's the problem. There's no way we can fit all of these folks together with our existing folks in one home. So what should we do? Well, of course, we could ask someone else in the church to open their home and start a separate house church in that home, and that option would be obvious. But let's say someone proposes a different option. Let's say someone suggests that we find a larger meeting space where we can all gather at once. A space that if we set up chairs and rows, we could fit 100 or 200 people. After all, we might grow further. And from the front of that space, we as leaders could lead songs, we could teach, we could say a prayer, we could take an offering, maybe we could share whatever info is pertinent to everyone, a worship service, the sort of thing that many churches today are clamoring to start up again because for them, this is the essence of what it means to be a church. Well, here's what I think we might want to know or think about if we were early church leaders. I think we'd ask some questions. First, I think we'd ask, if we do this proposal, can each one of our members continue to exercise their spiritual gifts when we meet, like they do now? Whether it's encouraging one another, teaching, praying, giving a prophecy, discerning the spirits, would everyone still have a chance to use their gifts? Well, no, we'd realize that would be hard with close to 100 people. We'd have to limit involvement in the service to a small group of leaders and maybe a few others each week who we could include in the service. Second thing I think we'd ask, could we continue to eat meals together and to celebrate communion as part of those meals like we do now? Well, no, we'd realize that would also be hard with so many people. We'd have to limit communion to a short time at the end of our service and make it simpler and more efficient. Just a little square of bread and a sip of juice or wine. Third question we'd ask, would we still feel like family like we do now, where everyone knows each other and we catch up on each other's weeks, we share our needs, our struggles, our opportunities, our victories? Well, no, we'd realize we'd all have to be quiet during the service, but we could chat with a few people over coffee afterwards. And we could hold separate meetings for connecting relationally during the week. We could call them small groups for those who were into that sort of thing. Fourth, I think we would ask, could we continue to give the bulk of our money to help those around us who are sick, who are imprisoned for their faith, who are poor, our widows, our orphans? And could we continue to support our evangelists and missionaries who are taking the gospel to other cities? Well, no, I think we'd realize that we would need to scale that back a lot because we'd have to pay for the building we were now meeting in. So, final question, if we moved from the home where we were caring for one another like family, where we were eating together, where we were all contributing our spiritual gifts and supporting and carrying out God's mission together, if we moved from there to a larger space where we had a weekly worship service like we do today, would we be becoming more the church or would we be becoming less the church? I appreciate the way Dion K. Johnson put it the other day. He's a leader in the Episcopal Church. I don't know anything about him or his theology or his politics, but let me quote some of what he said, which I do agree with. He said, "The work of the church is essential. The work of caring for the lonely, the marginalized, and the oppressed is essential. The work of speaking truth to power and seeking justice is essential. The work of being a loving, liberating, and life-giving presence in the world is essential. The work of welcoming the stranger is essential. The work of reconciliation and healing and caring is essential. The church does not need to open because the church never closed." So question, is your church open or is it closed? And what's the best way to be the church, which is essential right now? Well, with that thought, we come to the end of another episode of the Ministry Leaders Podcast. And if you find this podcast valuable, please share it with someone. You can also help spread the word by subscribing to the podcast or leaving us a rating or a review. Bye for now.